From where I started to where I am right now, if you ask me if I would have imagined being where I am today, absolutely not. I still remember making a mention to my boss that this is what I'm passionate about, and him mentioning that of all the CFOs who've gone into business, 50% of them have been successful, 50% of them have not been successful.
For today's episode in Success Documented, we have Mr. Gaganjot Singh. With over 3 decades in the corporate, he has held roles including CFO at Saint-Gobain, President and MD in Michelin EIM, and currently serves as the CEO of Mahindra Swaraj. Be ready to learn about strategic leadership, corporate culture, and much more. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Shaman, for having me here.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
All good. So, starting with your journey in the corporate, tell us about how it came along and how it's progressed through the years.
Yeah, so I've been working in corporate for about 27 years. If I look back, and if I was to summarize it in one word, Shemaine, the one word would be very, very gratifying. So it's been a very gratifying journey for me. From where I started to where I am right now, if you ask me if I would have imagined being where I am today, absolutely not. And that makes the journey very, very exciting. I think corporate is full of twists and turns. Full of excitement, full of certainties at times and uncertainties at other times. But I think a very enjoyable and gratifying journey, Shavin.
And what was your specific role-like journey? Because I know you switched from a finance-specific or mainly finance-specific roles to leadership roles in Michelin and Mahindra right now. So what was that like? Why was the transition there, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I think if I look back at my career so far, I would say that there have been 3 markers or milestones, if I was to put it that way. The first one was becoming a functional leader. So I became a CFO at the age of 35 for Saint-Gobain. That was milestone number 1 or marker number 1. The second one was becoming a CEO at 42. So I became the country CEO for South Africa when I was 42. And then becoming a regional president at 48. Those 3 were key milestones or markers as I look back. Now, were they absolutely planned? I would say no. I think as you go along in the corporate journey, you discover yourself, you discover the corporate world, and you discover your passions, your interests, what is energizing you, what is not, and you make some choices. So if I was to, delve into these 3 milestones or 3 markers, if I may. The first one being a CFO, of course, being a functional leader at 35 was very gratifying to say the least, because that was my first stepping stone, if I would say, into the role of leadership. And I've always said that a leader is different from a manager. So I was a manager all along, and once you become a functional leader, you're actually navigating an organization along with the managing director at that point of time, right? So that was transition number 1, from manager to being a leader.
And with each of these transitions, if you could tell us one major thing you learned through that transition.
So transitioning from managing or from being a manager to being a leader, I think what I learned being a leader was that you might be a functional expertise. Your functional expertise got you to the CFO position. But once you become a CFO, the functional bucket starts to diminish or decrease, and your leadership bucket starts to become bigger and bigger. So which means that you need to be inspiring people, you need to be inspiring your team, and you're no longer wearing a functional hat. You're on the board, you're on the management team, and you're now navigating a business, an entity, and it's no longer managing just your department or just a couple of folks in your team. So I think that was one big transition. Now, as a CFO, I always say that I'm not an accountant CFO. I've been a business partner CFO. And very often I used to get out in the field to be in front of a customer, understand what are the challenges of a customer, and tie it up to the world of finance. I always said that the role of a CFO is to make sense of the numbers. And if you have to make sense of the numbers, you need to be out there to understand the business very well. Now, as I was visiting these customers, um, I started to discover myself, and it was a bit of a self-discovery in the sense, Shivan. I thought that I'm an introvert. How would I strike a conversation with the customer? But what I realized that actually customer conversations were very insightful, were energizing me, and possibly I wanted to discover the world of business, and that's where the passion for business came along, right? Um, in those days, it wasn't so normal for a CFO to be branching out to a business role. I still remember making a mention to my boss that this is what I'm passionate about, and him mentioning that of all the CFOs who've gone into business, 50% of them have been successful, 50% of them have not been successful. And I thought maybe there is some risk to be taken here, and I'll take a risk. I'll bet on myself and get into the world of business. So the second transition, CEO of South Africa. So I was a country MD in South Africa. Was equally interesting and a great learning experience. It was my first time in the world of business. I was directly managing and leading an organization which needed a turnaround. Great learnings there, being directly responsible for a business, setting up a vision, setting up some strategic ambitions, and going after those. And I realized what it takes to take an organization along. You can run fast, but if you're running alone and you're not taking your organization along, you can go as far. So if you want to go far, you need to take everybody along. And if you have to take everybody along, you need to set some ambitions, some visions, which are realizable, which are inspiring, and then inspire the organization to get along with you. So that was, for me, a great learning after doing about three and a half years stint as a country CEO. And of course, after that, I was at crossroads and I was asked the question, do you want to continue in the world of finance, or would you want to get into the world of business, continue in the world of business? And it was an easy answer that I would want to continue to be in the world of business. My stated aspiration always was to head a region, to become a regional CEO one day. And that was my third marker, and it happened in 2021. Again, 3.5 years there, great learnings of leading a very diverse region across Africa, India, Middle East, where I can easily say there was no commonality at all. There was no homogeneity, and you need to find homogeneity in heterogeneity. And that was a great learning experience. That how do you look for homogeneity in a heterogeneous business context and take the region along.
That's very interesting. And you said specifically when you took the role as a CEO in South Africa, you had to turn around the region. Take us through your strategic framework to turn around generally.
So I think just to contextualize the business at that point of time, and I always look at business with a couple of lenses. First is how's the employee engagement? How are people doing? How engaged are in a business? So that's the first lens that I apply. The second lens I would apply is what are the customers saying, right? And when I looked at the scores, both were not doing well. So we had a very low customer engagement, and our customer feedbacks were actually somewhere in the negative domain.
Oh.
And I always believed, going back to your question on framework, that it's a bit of a flywheel. If you got an engaged employee base, if you got engaged teams, and if you got engaged people working with you, it almost leads you to some kind of a customer centricity, some kind of a customer satisfaction, some bit of customer loyalty, and which brings your business and brings you repeat business, and that's how this flywheel would go, right? Employee centricity, customer centricity, I think go hand in hand, and there's a bit of a domino there in as far as getting an engaging employee workforce, and then engage customer workforce. And if you can get that domino going, if you get that flywheel going, I think for me that's foundational for any business. So Shivan, to your question, what was the framework? The framework was to to get this flywheel to move, right? And at the foundation was to get this to move, and then starting to set some vision, ambition of what we want to be. And I think that is very essential for any business, to outline very clearly who we are today, who we want to become tomorrow, and how do we want to get there. And if you are explicit about it, I found out invariably you create some followership. You have people understand where you want to go, and therefore accompany you in the journey. And it's not about destination. I think corporate world or businesses are about a journey. You get into a particular position at a certain level. You get the baton. You need to hold on to that baton, run faster, and run higher. That's bit the a rudimentary way of, if I would say, looking at how would I structure myself in some of these positions.
And touching upon employee centricity, which creates a compounding effect, that, in my eyes at least, would have a lot to do with corporate culture, setting a good vision and mission and values along the way to support those vision and mission. So what do you think are essential components of any company's corporate structure, and how do you work on instilling that as a leader in your employees?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, firstly, Shumen, it's very important to outline what do you want to get to, right? What's your vision? What's your mission? Why does this organization exist? As I mentioned, where are we today? Where do we want to get to? That to me is fundamental. Once that has been done, I think it's important to understand what is the talent pool available, and is this talent pool then obviously it's a constant investing in their progress, in their careers. And to me, if a business is doing well, invariably it will have a ripple effect on the careers of the people, and the careers of the people need to then parachute, they need to take off. And if that's happening, I think that's where, again, the flywheel of performance, careers, employee centricity starts to move, Shimon.
And the second thing you touched upon was customer centricity, and I found this on your LinkedIn as well. And I feel like nowadays, more than ever, with like the age of e-commerce and online business, people are overlooking the customer experience and customer satisfaction as a whole, right? Leaving that whether it's a fact or not. Why do you think customer centricity is, of course it's important, but why do you emphasize it so much?
Well, the emphasis on customer centricity, and I think in every organization, in every setup that I've worked, I've believed that people are very cognizant of customer centricity. They all get the importance of customer centricity. I think what often we get wrong is understanding the customer well. In my own experiences, I've heard a lot of conversations around customer centricity, customer experiences, customer solutions. I think where we often trip in the corporate world is implementing solutions or introducing products that we think the customer needs, versus it's a bit of a putting the horse in front of the cart story, versus really understanding what does the customer actually need. So if we get our lens to be a bit outside in versus inside out, I think it's a very different story. So which means that the story really begins in understanding very well what does the customer actually need and what does that he actually does not need. I think this is a bit underinvested today in the corporate world. We tend to, jump to solutions very quickly. We tend to think we understand the customer needs very well, and therefore we tend to do projects and implement products, solutions that possibly some of them would meet some success, some of them would not, just because it all started with our own understanding of what the customer needs and not what actually the customer needs. Now, if you're able to marry what the customer actually needs, and you got insights which are powerful, which are researched out, well understood, and then you introduce product, services, solutions, invariably your success rate is going to be far higher, versus if you're trying to do it out of your understanding of what the customer needs. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is that if you are able to bring in products, solutions, services that the customer actually needs and bring it in a differentiated manner versus your competitors, invariably it is going to yield you success. You are able to garner much value versus your competitors, and of course, that to me is foundational to having profitable growth. So if we all talk about profitable growth, and for me, the cornerstone of profitable growth, apart from employee centricity, is customer centricity, where you bringing solutions that the customer actually needs and are able to, garner the rightful value for it, for the growth spiral to begin with.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. There you're talking about a market orientation strategy, but don't you think that sometimes product orientation is required, and especially like tech companies and other companies where development is more important in terms of the technological sphere, so like Apple with the iPhone or similar developments?
So I think product is becoming foundational today. So if you don't have a great product, you can try to build solutions on top of it. Yeah. It won't be functional. So I think that goes without saying that you need to have a differentiated quality product. The question is that you got a competitor who might have a product which is not exactly the same as yours, could be slightly differentiated, but okay, he will have certain features, you will have certain features. The true differentiation in the world that we live in is going to be coming out of services and experiences, because services and experiences are not so easily replicable. You could replicate a product. It's about innovation. Your competitor can catch up on the innovation. Obviously, you need to run faster than your competitor, maintain that product differentiation at all given point of time. But obviously, there's a catch up that can always be done. Services and experiences another ball game, and it's not the same as product. If you're able to create a significant differentiation on how you serve your customer, how does the customer experience you, your product, your services, it is not so easy to replicate. And why? Because services and experiences have a huge amount of human element attached to it, right? And therefore, the recipe there is very dependent on human beings, your teams, and that could be a key differentiator. Now, you spoke about digital and automation. I think that's, for me, a channel of how you serve a customer. True that the world that we are living in, digitization, data is running fast, and of course, those are tools that you would invariably need if you would want to differentiate yourself versus your competitors, Shavan. But for me, if you have a service and an experience which is at par with product, you got a formidable offer in place, where you can truly differentiate yourself. I often say I have a formula for it, which is P for product, S for service, and E for experience. In my earlier days, my reflection was that it is P plus S plus E. My current reflection is actually it's a force multiplier. It's P multiplied by S multiplied by E. And if you could have service and experience at par with product, you could have a multiplier effect, which can give you, disproportionate gains. My other reflection is oftentimes services and experiences are underrated. The ripple effect that services experiences have on product and on your volume growths are a bit understated. And if you were to set the clock right, services and experiences can actually be expressed in terms of share of market. And I think it's important that businesses, when they build their bridges on how are they going to go from volume X to volume Y, they explicitly mention about what part of their growth is going to come from services, what part of the growth is going to come from experiences. And if we start making it tangible, I think it's going to have quite a positive effect for organizations.
And you've pointed out some blind spots already, such as, lack of focus on experience or customer centricity. But other than that, what do you think is the main blind spot that most business leaders have today?
I think talent is something that is a bit underrated. I think businesses have started to realize the importance of having, as I mentioned earlier on, the right talent that is relevant for what you want to do with you. I also believe learning and development, upskilling is a bit under-leveraged. Human beings have a huge potential, and I think it's the job of organizations and leaders to unleash that potential. What's that potential? How much can an individual do? Is a big factor of the manager that a person is working for and the organization that he's working for. I think understanding the strengths of a person and saying that, okay, calling it out, calling those strengths out to say that this is the unique strengths that the strength that this person comes with. Honing those strengths, taking it to the next level, putting a person in positions where he can really leverage his strengths is extremely important. I think along with that, keeping people up with the time, investing. We talk so often about AI, data, digitization, but how many of us actually get it? How many of us are able to use it? How many of us are able to apply in our daily businesses is a big question mark for me, right? So therefore, I think what is important is that we identify our key. We identify talent. Everybody has talent. We identify the pace at which a person is able to unleash his potential, and we give the right inputs for people to really groom and flourish for themselves. Since you mentioned about the blind spot, I believe that this is, as I said, a bit underrated currently, under leverage. We are over-investing around, we are investing, right, if I may say, or over-investing at times on technology, but this is something that possibly we could do much better on.
So, you've had a very long corporate experience, and looking back at it, what are some moments or some incidents that really built who you are as a leader today? Just like standout incidents.
I think there have been many incidents and many experiences I've had, Shivan. And I've been very fortunate to have worked with some excellent leaders and some excellent managers right from my Sankaba days. I think I'm a sum total of those experiences that I've had with these managers. What I can, rather than calling out incidents, I would call out some learnings I've had during, especially last 2 decades, if I may. The first one is a learning mindset. I think it is very, very important to be continuously open to learning. And I realized very early on in my career how much important learning was. And therefore, even in my formative years, when I was, navigating change transitions in my career, I would look at what is new that I'm going to be learning in the position. Is it the same? Is the context changing? Is the industry changing? How's the framework changing? And often when I'm in campuses, I tell students that, in your first decade and a half to 2 decades, chase learnings. Don't chase money, don't chase titles, because if you've got learnings with you, money and title will follow, right? So that's first.
Are there any specific skills do you think are worth learning in this specific time and age?
I think there are, if I would call out some meta skills of today, self-awareness is one, very powerful skill. Humility is possibly the second meta skill, if I may, and then vulnerability. I think those were the three, those would be my top 3 in terms of learning behavioral skills.
How do you express vulnerability when you're supposed to be a leader? I think some leaders might struggle with that. If, for example, you've had a bad quarter, how do you express that to your employees without coming off weak, I would say.
I think the prerequisite to vulnerability is a high degree of self-awareness, right? Understanding yourself, what are your strengths, what energizes you, where possibly you're still on a learning curve, and if you can express yourself to your own people that these are your strengths and this is what you're trying, or this is what you're grappling with, or this is what you're trying to develop with. I think it's very powerful, first of all, because what it does is that when you explicitly mention it to your teams, you're actually telling them this is what I stand for, and you're in turn telling them that hold me accountable to what I'm saying right now. So self-awareness for me is fundamental to vulnerability. It is very difficult to be vulnerable if you're not self-aware. If you're comfortable under the skin of who you are, vulnerability would follow much with ease. Calling spade a spade, being authentic is important, and authenticity is what could possibly help you out in reaching out to your people. You just mentioned about you had a bad quarter. Being explicit about the fact that we indeed had a bad quarter, and we understand why, and we're going to be learning from it and bounce back with these 2-3 actions is possibly the way I would go about it, Shivin. But again, I think very, very important that you remain authentic, because as a leader, if you're trying to put up or if you're going to show up what you actually are not, time is going to catch up with you.
Right.
And I think humility is again something that is going to help you a lot in this exercise. Years of past where a leader knew it all are gone. A leader cannot know it all and is not supposed to know it all, right? There's tsunami of knowledge that is available today to each one and every one of us. And Shivin, today what you're reading is going to be very different from what I'm reading. And I must acknowledge what you're reading and take inputs from you and dovetail it with my understanding of things to make a perfect solution. But the mindset that I know it all or I should know it all, I think I don't think it would stand on its feet in the day and age that we're living in. So, and therefore, I think humility again is something that would facilitate being vulnerable, right? So, to your point on how do you be vulnerable? So, yeah. So, I think as I mentioned, having a learning mindset is something I take away from my 2.5 decades plus of career. Taking risks is something that I would say that is extremely important. If I was to give you a particular example, I still remember and we discussed earlier on, transitioning from the world of finance to the world of business. I mentioned one of my managers telling me that it's a 50% success rate. At that point of time, you're taking a risk on yourself. You're taking a bet on yourself. And as I was transitioning, I had our regional head at that point of time, and we were in a conference who was on a stage and who mentioned that, the organization is taking bets on people. And in a conference, they said, look here, we're taking a bet on Gagan, right? And I realized that as much as you are taking a bet or risk on yourself, the organization is doing the same. But what is important is that one needs to bet on himself. You need to take some risks in life if you were to navigate the vertical corporate world. So taking risks is the second one. Thirdly, I think corporate world is if you run your position as your business, there are entrepreneurs, and I call it I use the word intrapreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur in your position, you're running your position as your own business, invariably success would follow. So number of incidences, number of learnings along the way have led me to, let's say, my reflection that being a learner, taking risks, and running your positions just as it was your business would hold you in good stead for times to come.
That's amazing. And just to wrap up, if there was one piece of advice, maybe a one-liner that you could give to all the aspiring corporate leaders out there, what would that be?
I discovered my purpose pretty late in my career. If there's one piece of advice I would have is to determine your purpose. Why are you in the corporate world? Why do you exist on earth? State your purpose. At least state it to yourself. Once you've been able to articulate purpose, and it is a simple one-liner, but takes a few months to get there, that gives you an anchorage of what is that you're doing day in, day out, what you should be doing day in, day out, right? Very often we have this question, what do I do next? What do I do next? Question is answered through your purpose statement. You need to constantly, calibrate your purpose to where you are, what you're doing, what you intend doing, and invariably you'll find a lot of answers and solutions that you're trying to seek elsewhere. Again, easier said than done. I think there are many books which have been written, a lot of people talking about purpose, but I imagine that it is something that does need some deep reflection, some me time, some thought about what energizes you, what does not, equally what does not, and then getting yourself into positions where you can serve your purpose. And if you can get into those kind of positions, I think corporate is an exciting world to be in.
That's amazing. I love that purpose. Yeah. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Shivan, for having me over.
Conversation.
Same here.
Where can people keep up with your work?
Thank you.
LinkedIn?
Oh yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a perfect channel. I'm not so much active on social media, but I do. My purpose is to pay it forward, and I think if I have to live my purpose, I need to be more socially active. Yeah. But LinkedIn is a great source to be in.
That's amazing. We'll link that in the description. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Shivan. Thank you so much.